Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is the fourth installment in the Indiana Jones franchise, and many consider it to be the only one that's straight up bad. Boasting an audience score of 54% on Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has always kind of been seen as a disappointment for both Indiana Jones and Steven Spielberg. After years of this movie being destroyed by critics and fans alike, today, I take a stand to help our defendant. I'm here to try and convince you why it's really not that bad. I'm going to address some of the things this movie is most criticized for, as well as say some things that I think are pretty good about it. That's enough talking. Let's get into it.
Go get help. Help. Help! 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 Go!
Right away, let me address one of the biggest critiques of this movie. The silly moments, with an emphasis on the now infamous nuke scene. For those who don't know, this movie gets a lot of heat because in order to survive a nuclear explosion, Indiana, he hides in a fridge, and it works. Let me tell you, this isn't very silly at all. It actually makes complete sense. For starters, I have a theory that this nuke wasn't the large-scale nuclear bomb we all think of. The traditional nuke was invented in 1945 by Robert Oppenheimer, and this movie takes place in 1957. Clearly, the nuke had already been around for about 12 years, and I believe the one we see in the movie is like a smaller scale kind of nuke. Secondly, tests have been done to prove that a fridge could offer substantial protection from a nuke. In 1955, a test was done to see what the effects of a nuke would be on a small town, and regarding the fridge, here's what had to be said. Overpressure caused the bomb's shock wave to crease the freezer door, spring the springs, and break the plastic lining inside of the door. However, the door could still be latched shut, and when plugged in, it still works. It's strange, I know, to believe that a fridge could keep our dear Dr. Jones safe from a nuke, but turns out it's actually quite possible.
Marion Ravenwood is your mother.
Oh, for God's sake, Indy, it's not that hard.
No, I never thought that.
Another complaint is that besides Indiana, all the supporting characters are kind of boring. This includes people like Marion, Mutt, and of course, our villain. I actually think that both Marion and Mutt add a lot to the story, and they help us see another side of Indiana we don't normally see. In the first three movies, we get Indy with a new girl he's trying to, get with, and oftentimes a goofy sidekick, like Short Round or, like the Gimli guy. By bringing back Marion, we get a mix of something we haven't seen before. We always get to see the side of Indy where he's getting the girl. But here we see what happens when he leaves a woman and she ends up back in his life. On the other hand, Mutt gives us a side of Indy we never see in the first three. Here, Indy has a son and he has to be responsible and try his best to father Mutt, while Mutt doesn't really want to be fathered by Indy. I think it's an interesting and fresh dynamic that was previously absent from the franchise, and Shia LaBeouf does a good job. What I can say about our villain is that she's definitely unique. I think you'd be lying if you didn't think of her right away when you thought of this movie. As far as Indiana Jones villains go, I don't think any of them are that interesting. The villains in 1 and 3 are especially almost bad. With Spalko in 4, you remember what she looks like, and you remember the performance. She's her own evil outside of the Germans we've seen so many times in this franchise. And she's not after gold or treasure, she wants knowledge. The knowledge that comes, of course, from aliens, and in all honesty, I don't see why people complain about the aliens. This world is anything but grounded in reality, and the existence of aliens is almost more realistic than some of the other stuff we've seen in the franchise. In a world where all these mythical things exist, it only makes sense for aliens to exist. If you want to call the aliens silly and dumb, that's fine, but then you have to call the whole franchise dumb. Lastly, people say this movie ruined the legacy and the perfect ending The Last Crusade gave us. I think that claim is kind of silly. If you think the ending in Last Crusade was perfect, it's really not. Indy spends so much time with so many different women, and we never really get to see what happens with any of them. Crystal Skull gives us a movie that is personal for Indy, and it shows what his life is like down the road. Yeah, he's much older, but if anything, we should just be happy that he's still doing what he's doing. He is who he is, and he's never gonna stop. We get to leave this movie knowing that no matter how old he gets, for Indiana Jones, there will always be another adventure.
Hey, grab the rope!
Grab the rope!
Hold tight.
Is this movie as good as the originals? No, but by no means is it this horrible atrocity movie either. I think if you turn away from the blind hate, you can realize this movie has some things to enjoy, and it's not quite as bad as you think. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I did an alright job trying to change your mind on this. Subscribe to the channel to see all the videos I make, and I will see you next Monday for our next villain review.